In this session, we're going to look at creating a dice rolling program where we'll be able to click a button and randomly generate a number between 1 and 6 and display the appropriate dice face on screen. So let's get underway. We're going to start with a new project. Once again, it's going to be a Visual Basic project and we're going to be using Windows Forms. I'm going to call it Dice Roll. And I'm going to place it in my Documents folder and click on Select Folder and create it in the root of that folder and click on OK. Now the first thing I'm going to do is set my environment, so I'm going to pin out my toolbar and click on Common Elements, Common Controls, and then I'm going to stretch my Properties panel all the way up. I'm going to select the form first of all, and I'm going to change the name of the form. So the text at the top, I'm going to put L Marsden and then www.lmarsden.com. So you can actually put your name at the top of this form, and that way you know whose application is, especially if someone decides to print out your work. I'm also going to stretch the form just a little bit to make it a little bit bigger. I can readjust this as I go. And I'm going to place a button on the stage. It's going to be a fairly predominant button, and we're going to have the text on it called Roll Dice, and then its name is going to be BTN Roll Dice. And I'll be using the developer principles of Hungarian notation and also camel case. So now I've got my roll dice. I also need a picture box, so I'm going to head down and select my picture box and draw that right in the middle of the stage. This will adjust with the images that I'm putting in there. But once again, I'm going to go down and give it a name, and it's going to be called PIC Dice Face. So it's going to be a picture box, a pic, and it's going to be dice face. So that's the name of that area. Okay, the last thing I need to do is actually get my elements and load them into the system. So I'm going to be using, or at the moment on my frame, so what I have to do is actually load this up to a virtual server. So I'm just going to click the cloud and I need to upload some information there. So on my desktop I have a folder with some dice faces in there. These are all PNGs. I find that PNGs and JPEGs work really well, and these days I'm very fond of the PNG file. So this is going to upload them for me and place them into the uploads folder. So I can now close that, and I just need to move them, and to do that I'm just going to go to File, Open, and just go down to File, and I'm just going to go into my uploads. I'm just going to select all these and go Command C or copy, and then in my documents inside the folder that I created before, or inside my downloads, inside the folder called Dice Roll, I'm just going to make a folder here by going New Folder and just call it Assets. And in Assets, I'm just going to Command V or paste those images. So I've got dice face 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in there. So now they're in, and go cancel. So all I've really done is just put them inside the project folder, so they're all together in the one subfolder. So my project stays together nicely. Now what I need to do is actually load some files in here. So once I select the picture box and scroll up the properties, you'll notice that there is an image, and at the moment there is none there. So I'm just going to click here and click on the dots. But rather than get a local resource and import, I'm actually going to go Project Resource File, and I'm going to import a whole lot of files. So once again, I'm going to go into the Downloads folder where I saved my work before, go into Assets, and I'm going to select images 1 all the way through to 6 and click on Open. And then click on OK. And this will actually import all the files into my project. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually then go through, and rather than have normal, I'm just going to have it auto size. So now because the dice are all made the same, they'll be the same size. I'm just replacing that image. Okay, so I've labeled the picture box, I've labeled my button, I've imported my images, and I'm ready to go. So let's do some coding. So I'm going to open up my file, and one of the first things we need to do is actually enter in some developer comments. I'm going up the top, putting in a single quote, and then I can actually enter in some information like developer. And sometimes people like to put minuses or pluses, up to you. So in this case here, I'm going to put my name, and then you can put the date, then you can have the subject, the program name, and then a good thing to have is also an overview, just discussing what the program does. And I'll leave you to put your developer comments in, and now we can move down to the programming part. So we've done the developer internal comments, and now we're ready to code. So one of the first things we need to do is actually declare our local variable. So I'm going to put a comment in, and the variable we're going to declare is dim, and it's going to be iRandomNumber, and that's going to be as an integer. I might actually make this a little bit bigger for everyone to see. So I've got iRandomNumber as an integer. The next thing we need to do is do our initialization. Now, whenever we develop a random number, we have to run a program or a function called randomize. And this function actually starts the computer to generate a random number, so you don't start with the same number every time. So it's important that you initialize this function, and therefore that's why it's under my initialization section. The next thing is we normally have in our programming is input, but in this case there's no input, so we'll go straight to processing. And in our processing we want to generate the random number. So iRandomNumber is going to be equal to, and we need to convert to integer. And what do we want to convert? Well, we want to make an integer out of a random number. So we're going to use the function random, which is RND, and we want to times it by the largest size of the dice. So we want to times it by 6, and then we want to make sure that it is a 6, so we're going to add 1 to it as well. So once we go to init, we're going to add 1 and paste a bracket around that one as well. So it seems like there's a lot of brackets, but it converts the answer to an integer. So cinit is to convert it, use a function to convert to an integer. We want to make an integer of the random number times 6 plus 1, so it always rounds up, so we'll have numbers between 1 and 6. The next thing we want to do is actually output that number. So we're going into the output section. So to output it, I'm just going to use a message box at the moment, and I'm just going to output iRandomNumber. So there's no use trying to do anything with the graphics or anything like that until we know we're generating the right random number. So let's test our program. So I'm going to save all first of all, and then test the program to ensure that it's running correctly. Here is my program with the default image. When I click roll dice, it should give me a random number. The first one is 6. Click it again. We have 5, 1, and you can go through and check all the numbers come up, but we know that's working correctly, so I'm going to stop the program. Okay, we know that's fine. So now what we want to do is substitute the image on our form. So we want to change this image in the picture box to the corresponding correct graphic. So as it goes through, it'll change. So the best way to do that is to actually use what's called a case statement. So we're going to start the case statement by going select, case, and then the variable. So in this case, iRandomNumber, which is what's storing the random number at the moment. So what do we want to do? Well, case it as a 1. Then we want to get the picture box. So pick dice faces, and we want to change its image. So we just want to move that back in, so the method's with the image. So what do we want to make that equal to? Well, we actually want to make that equal to my resources. And in particular, we can actually add our dice face 1. Now you notice that the file names have come in as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Where if I had dice 01, dice 02, you would see those in there. So this is going to use the resource dice 1, and if a 1 occurs, then that will go in there. So, and we can do the same now, case it's 2. So case 2, and then we can follow that along. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly copy and paste this one line of code, so I have 6 of them. and then I'll go through and go case 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then adjust the ends to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now when the random number gets generated, and I'll still show that at the moment as a random number, and then the image then should change to the corresponding image. So let's test our program and see how we're going. Before we leave here, we must end select, which is correct. So we've ended our open select. The program's compiled correctly. So let's just move it over here. I'm going to click start roll. The first number's a 6, and hence we've got it should then display 6. Let's roll it again. We have a 2. Now we have a 2. 6, 6. So to get rid of the message box, all I need to come back in and do is just to comment that one line of code out. Save it all again once more. When I run my program this time, I should be able to just click on the dice and you'll see the dice faces change. Remember to save your work, and also if you need to print your code, you can go have a look at another tutorial, and this will help you work with graphics in Visual Basic.